For centuries, we were taught that reality is mechanical, that the mind is confined to the brain, that telepathy is a myth, and that psychedelics were mere hallucinations. But what if science has led us astray with a narrow perspective of a far richer universe? This is Damage Control, and this is a report on Rupert Sheldrake's Morphic Resonance. Déjà vu, the sudden eerie feeling that you lived a moment before. Neuroscience calls it a glitch, a brief misfire in memory processing, but that doesn't fully explain how real it feels. And déjà vu isn't the only anomaly. In nature, we see complex behaviors with no clear source. Birds fly in perfect formation. Fish shift direction instantly, as if controlled by one mind. Insects emerge in unison across continents. And animals develop camouflage so precise it matches their own environment down to texture and light. These patterns often appear without learning or trial and error. Genetics and evolution offer a part of the answer, but are they the whole story? Biologist Rupert Sheldrake thinks something is missing. In A New Science of Life and the Presence of the Past, he proposes that nature has a memory, not stored in DNA, but in invisible fields. He calls this Morphic Resonance, the idea that once a pattern occurs, it becomes more likely to happen again, across time, across individuals, even across species. Sheldrake suggests the brain may function more like a receiver and transmitter of these fields, similar to how a magnet produces an electromagnetic field. The biological life forms might not only generate morphic fields, but tune into them as well. If true, it could fill a major gap in Darwin's theory, explaining how new traits and behaviors emerge rapidly, without long chains of mutation and selection. Maxwell predicted radio waves before we could detect them. Sheldrake, drawing from biology and quantum theory, believes morphic fields could be the next invisible force, shaping life through memory, not just matter. It also raises further questions. If behavior and memory can spread through fields, could thoughts? Some researchers believe telepathy, long dismissed by science, may be real, and if minds can connect this way, it opens up another possibility. If alien intelligence ever contacted us, it might not speak in words. It might speak through resonance. In the world of science, some ideas emerge quietly, dismissed as fringe theories, only later to reshape the foundations of how we perceive the natural world. Rupert Sheldrake may be one such scientist. A biologist with a background in biochemistry at Cambridge University and a career spanning developmental biology and plant physiology, Sheldrake began questioning the rigid, mechanistic models of nature early in his academic life. The journey into morphic resonance started with a fundamental observation. Biological development and inheritance could not be explained solely by genetics and biochemical reactions. While working on plant morphogenesis, he noticed that organisms seemed to follow invisible guiding structures akin to memory traces, which directed their development in ways that traditional biology couldn't explain. Sheldrake's dissatisfaction with conventional science led him to explore alternative explanations. He was deeply influenced by the work of physicists such as David Bohm and Hans-Peter Dürr, who suggested that fields, rather than particles, played a dominant role in shaping the fabric of reality. It was in this context he formulated the radical idea that nature itself has a memory. At the core of Sheldrake's hypothesis is the concept of morphic fields, invisible organizing patterns that shape biological structures, behaviors, and even consciousness itself. These fields, he argues, act as a kind of collective memory, storing the past patterns and reinforcing them through repetition. As Sheldrake defines in his 2009 book, morphogenetic fields are responsible for the characteristic form and organization of systems at all levels of complexity, not only in the realm of biology, but also in the realms of chemistry and physics. The term morphogenetic field originates from early 20th century developmental biology, combining the Greek words morphe, meaning form, and genesis, meaning creation. Originally used to describe the guiding forces behind embryonic growth, Sheldrake expanded the idea beyond biology, suggesting that these fields influence behavior, learning, and even cultural transmission. He coined the term Morphic Resonance, where resonance implies that patterns from the past continue to shape the present, acting as a kind of collective non-local memory. But where is memory actually stored? For over a century, scientists have searched for the physical location of memories within the brain without success. The dominant theory suggests that memories are stored in synaptic connections. But this raises a paradox. The molecules that make up these synapses are constantly being replaced, yet memories can last a lifetime. Nobel Prize-winning neuroscientist Eric Kandel has acknowledged that we don't understand how the brain transfers or recalls stored memories, nor why the hippocampus is necessary for short-term memory formation, but not for long-term storage. More troubling still, experiments with brain lesions have failed to pinpoint memory locations. Carl Lashley's decades of work with rats showed that even when large portions of the brain were removed, trained behaviors persisted, leading him to conclude that memory is not localized but distributed, or perhaps exists beyond the brain entirely. Unlike the genetic code, which transmits specific biological instructions, Morphic resonance does not rely on physical carriers of information like DNA. Instead, it operates more like a non-local memory system, where new behaviors or patterns become easier to replicate the more often they occur. For example, once a rat learns a new way to escape a maze, other rats, even in different locations, should learn the same task faster. Once a chemical compound successfully crystallizes for the first time, subsequent crystallizations should happen more quickly worldwide. And when a new language develops, new learners should find it easier to acquire words and grammatical structures that have already been used widely before. This suggests that the habits of nature are not fixed but evolve over time, shaped by the repeated actions of the past. Sheldrake's theory stands in stark contrast to the prevailing reductionist approach in biology. As Sheldrake himself notes, one of the paradoxes of the 20th century science was that quantum theory ushered in a revolutionary change of perspective in physics, revealing the limits of reductionism, while biology moved in the opposite direction, towards extreme reductionism. Quantum physics revealed that reality is fundamentally non-local, interconnected and probabilistic, contradicting the classical Newtonian vision of a predictable, mechanistic world. Meanwhile, biology ignored this revolution, insisting that life could be fully understood through chemical interactions and genetic codes. Sheldrake's work seems to bridge this gap, suggesting that biological systems like quantum systems may operate under field-like influences rather than purely material interactions. His hypothesis aligns with concepts like quantum entanglement, where particles remain mysteriously connected across vast distances, Bohm's implicate order, where patterns in nature arise from hidden underlying structures in spacetime, self-organizing systems in chaos theory, which suggests that complex behaviors emerge naturally without external control. If morphic resonance is real, it has profound implications for everything from evolution to consciousness. It suggests that evolution is guided not just by genetic mutation, but by cumulative memory of past organisms. The human culture and learning are not just products of social transmission, but of an underlying collective field. The memories may not be stored in the brain, but accessed from a larger informational field, explaining phenomena like telepathy and déjà vu. The morphic fields might be understood as a soul field, a unifying, living network that bridges scientific inquiry with spiritual tradition, integrating the concept of a universal soul into our understanding of nature. These ideas may sound speculative, but Sheldrake has spent decades testing its predictions. Through controlled experiments, he's gathered evidence suggesting that memory, learning, and even behavior are not strictly stored in the brain or genes, but accessed through morphic fields. One of the strongest lines of evidence for morphic resonance comes from animal learning and behavior inheritance studies. If behaviors can be transmitted non-locally, then animals learning a new task in one location should make it easier for others, even those unrelated and geographically distant, to learn the same task later. The first large-scale study suggesting non-local inheritance of learning was conducted by William McDougall at Harvard University in the 1920s. McDougall trained rats to escape from a water maze by swimming toward a dimly lit gangway while avoiding a brightly lit one, which delivered an electric shock. Over 32 generations of rats, more than 15,000 individual tests over 15 years, McDougall observed a gradual reduction in the number of errors, possibly through morphic resonance. A naturally occurring example of apparent morphic resonance was observed in blue tits and related bird species in the UK and Europe. The first recorded instance of blue tits pecking through milk bottle caps to drink cream was in Southampton in 1921. Over the next few decades, this behaviour spread to more than 89 separate locations across Britain, in many cases where birds could not have learned it through direct imitation. During World War II, between the years of 1939 and 1945, milk deliveries were halted, and most birds that had learned the behaviour died. Yet when deliveries resumed in 1947, this same behaviour reappeared in multiple locations, almost simultaneously, even though the previous generation of milk-drinking birds had not survived. This suggests a collective memory effect, rather than individual birds independently rediscovering the behaviour each time. In one of Sheldrake's most well-known studies, he investigates whether dogs can anticipate their owners' returns without relying on conventional cues. Over 1,000 case studies of dogs and more than 600 of cats were collected, with detailed reports on pet behaviour when owners were about to return home. The most rigorous controlled experiment, a dog named JT, was tested in 100 trials. The dog waited by the door in 85% of cases, precisely at the moment when the owner decided to return home, even if the owner travelled by an unfamiliar route or vehicle. Video analysis showed JT spent only 4% of its time at the window when the owner was absent, but that figure jumped to 55% when the owner was on the way home, an increase far beyond statistical chance. Randomized blinded experiments confirmed that these results were not due to habit, routine, or sensory cues, suggesting a form of non-local morphic connection between pets and owners. One of the most intriguing tests of morphic resonance involved language acquisition. In 1982, a competition held by New Scientist researcher Richard Gentle proposed a test using traditional Turkish nursery rhyme. Sheldrake adapted this idea by conducting a series of experiments with Japanese nursery rhymes, testing hundreds of English-speaking participants. Participants were asked to memorize a traditional Japanese rhyme and a randomly created nonsense rhyme with the same sibyllic structure. 62% of the participants found that the genuine nursery rhyme was easier to recall, significantly above the 33% expected by chance. This suggests that people unconsciously resonated with the memory of past speakers, even if they had no prior exposure to the language. Since the 1980s, Sheldrake and other researchers have tested the phenomenon of people being sensed when they are being watched. In controlled experiments, blindfolded subjects sat with their backs to a hidden observer who either stared at them or looked away at random intervals. Participants had to guess whether they were being watched, and over tens of thousands of trials, subjects were correct 55% of the time, significantly above the 50% expected by chance. More than 18,000 people participated in a 1995 study at the Nemo Science Centre in Amsterdam, yielding statistically significant positive results. Follow-up tests using CCTV and surveillance systems showed similar effects, suggesting that people could sense being watched even through screens. These findings indicate that human perception may extend beyond the conventional sensory range, hinting at a morphic field connection between observer and observed. Throughout history, breakthroughs in science, mathematics, and engineering have occurred not in isolation, but in striking synchrony, across different cultures, continents, and minds. How is it that discoveries emerge almost simultaneously, as if guided by an unseen force? Take the case of calculus, independently formulated by Isaac Newton and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz in Germany in the late 17th century, or the near-identical development of the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace. Again and again, revolutionary ideas have appeared in multiple places at once, as if knowledge itself ripples outward, waiting to be tapped into. In the early 20th century, Nikola Tesla and Guglielmo Marconi raced to harness radio waves for wireless communication. Despite working on opposite sides of the Atlantic, the Wright brothers in the United States and Alberto Santos Dumont in Brazil both pioneered human flight. Even in physics, the sudden emergence of quantum mechanics saw multiple scientists, Planck, Einstein, Heisenberg, Schrödinger, grappling with the same mysteries at nearly the same time. Coincidence? Or could this point to a deeper collective informational web that connects human minds, allowing breakthroughs to suddenly emerge simultaneously across the globe? This phenomenon of cultural convergence extends beyond science. Consider the Renaissance, where an explosion of art, literature and scientific thought emerged simultaneously in Italy, the Netherlands and the Islamic world. Or the Axial Age, a period of around 500 BCE, when across vastly different regions, spiritual leaders such as Confucius, Buddha, Socrates, and the Hebrew prophets introduced radical philosophies that reshaped civilization. Even modern technological revolutions follow this pattern. The rise of the internet, social media, and artificial intelligence has been a collective effort spanning continents, mirroring the way biological evolution itself follows converging patterns across species. Could it be that cultural and intellectual progress does not unfold randomly, but follows an underlying field of habit, an accumulating memory of past breakthroughs? Rupert Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance suggests that once an idea, a discovery, or a behavior takes root, it becomes easier for others to replicate, no matter where they are. The past informs the present in ways we only are beginning to grasp. If true, this means that we are not isolated individuals reinventing the wheel with every new discovery. Instead, we are participants in a living, evolving field of knowledge, connected by an invisible thread of shared memory that extends through time and space. For centuries, mystics, shamans, and visionaries have described a world beyond the senses, a realm of deep connection and collective memory. Could these experiences be more than mere hallucinations? And if so, could psychedelic compounds like DMT, psilocybin, and LSD unlock access to what Sheldrake calls the morphic field, a vast interconnected memory of all life? Ancient traditions suggest that the mind can reach beyond itself, tapping into a universal consciousness. In the Amazon, ayahuasca shamans report journeys into an objective space of shared knowledge, rather than a drug-induced fantasy. Similarly, indigenous Siberian and North American shamans, under the influence of psychedelics, have long described telepathic communication with animals, spirits, and other shamans across great distances. The idea that psychedelics allow the mind to tune into higher frequencies of reality is not just folklore. Rupert Sheldrake and Terence McKenna speculated that these substances may temporarily dismantle the brain's habitual filters, opening a window to a field of knowledge normally inaccessible. They suggest that the human imagination might be an expression of the greater Gaian mind, a planetary intelligence holding the accumulated wisdom of life. Could it be that DMT and similar compounds act as tuning mechanisms, adjusting the brain's frequency to achieve a different layer of reality? McKenna and Sheldrake believed that psychedelic visions are encounters with an independent ontological reality, a vast reservoir of cosmic creativity and intelligence. This hypothesis aligns with the idea that memory, learning, and even cultural evolution are stored in a non-local field, suggesting that the psychedelic experience might be a direct interaction with this expansive informational web. Is the human mind merely a receiver, tuning into the morphic field like a radio? Are our dreams, visions, and psychedelic encounters part of a deeper collective memory? If consciousness is not confined to the brain, what does this mean for human evolution and the nature of reality itself? If certain compounds allow us to access the morphic field, are they merely biochemical triggers, or have ancient traditions been using them as tools for interdimensional communication all along? If nature's laws are not fixed but evolving habits, then our entire approach to science must change. For centuries, we have viewed reality as a machine, something to be measured, analysed and controlled. But what if the universe is not a machine at all? What if it's alive with memory, shaped by everything that has ever existed? If true, this changes everything. Every discovery, every artistic inspiration, every breakthrough in science may not be isolated genius, but the echo of something greater, a shared memory rippling across time. And what does this mean for us? Societies shift between individualism and collectivism, but what if we are both, materially individualist, yet spiritually collectivist? What if our instincts, our dreams, and even our thoughts are not entirely our own, but part of a deeper field of intelligence that shapes human history? As Sheldrake himself puts it from his book Presence of the Past, in the light of formative causation, the elusiveness of memory traces has a very simple explanation. They do not exist. Rather, memory depends on morphic resonance from the patterns of activity of the brain in the past. We tune into ourselves in the past. We do not carry our memories around inside our brains. If memory itself is non-local, then what else exists beyond us? Could our thoughts, emotions, the very sense of self be part of a vast living field that transcends space and time? And if consciousness is not confined to the brain, if thoughts can ripple across space, then who else is listening? Thanks for watching Damage Control. Why not share this with someone who believes reality is simply material? It costs you nothing, but it helps us work towards our goal of providing with great free documentary content from the darker side of life.